And you also know she interviewed the man we then called Prince Andrew on BBC Newsnight back in 2019. And an awful lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. Emily, talk us through your latest impression, really, of where this leaves us.
I just think that dates become increasingly important when you look at the stuff, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are now helping themselves to the Department of Justice website, and you can check names and you can check correspondence and you can check the pictures. And to be honest, there is so much stuff there now. We know there's at least 3 million pages. I mean, there may be another 3 million still out there, but one of the hardest things is to know what you're looking for and, frankly, what the stuff itself is telling you. And this is why I keep saying dates, because there were people who befriended Epstein in the 90s and in 2000, and whilst it's really important that we hear from them and what they knew and what they saw, the turning point is after his conviction. So he became a convicted sex offender in 2008. And the latest revelation about the man we used to call Prince Andrew, who weirdly stuck in my brain still as Prince Andrew, is that another woman came forward who claimed she spent the night at his residence, Royal Lodge, the place he's now just been kicked out of, in 2010. Why is that relevant? Because 2010 was after that conviction. It was after Epstein had been to jail and all his friends knew he'd been to jail. He was a convicted sex offender. So this whole question of judgment is really called upon to bear. You can get away with saying, I saw nothing, I knew nothing, I didn't realise, up to a point, if it's true. Yeah. Once the whole world knows that he's been to prison on sex offences, on juvenile sex offences, then you are dealing with a friendship with a convicted paedophile. And if this woman was trafficked by Epstein, then there is every chance that the prince would have known that she had come from a man.
That's where she came from. And we already know from a previous release of files that he told you a lie to your face in that 2019 interview about
the dates.
The ending of the friendship.
Again. Yeah, so he said on December the 5th of 2010 that he had gone to stay with Epstein. He'd lived in his Manhattan mansion, for about 4 or 5 days. And on the final day, he'd taken Epstein for this walk in the park, the one that was photographed, to break off the relationship. And I'll never forget that phrase that he used, I was too honourable to do it by email or do it on the phone. So if that was the beginning of December 2010, why was he back in touch with him on Christmas Eve? That same month. And why was he then in touch with them again in February, as was his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson? So everything that was sort of built up in that relationship of, well, I realise now he was an inappropriate man. Thank God I broke off the friendship when I did. I haven't seen him since that day. That was all a lie. It's all been exposed now.
And we were talking about Peter Mandelson in the first part of the programme, and we played a clip of him referring to the 3 buckets of Epstein's life: business and financial, political and academic, and sexual. And that some people within those sections crossed over, others didn't, Peter Mandelson claiming he didn't. Sarah Ferguson, definitely financial. There was a great deal of financial back and forth, wasn't there, in terms of emails, at least, between Sarah Ferguson and Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know enough of the Sarah Ferguson story, but I know that quite often with Epstein it all comes back to money lent or money given, but given as a loan, because that makes it tax-free. And in the case of Epstein, in the case of Mandelson over the weekend, there's been some phenomenally good reporting from the FT, which added together the sums that they believe Epstein gave to Peter Mandelson and also to his partner, which totaled to Mandelson about £75,000. Now, Peter Mandelson says, he doesn't deny it. He says he has no recollection of this, but I think the words are something like, leave it to me.
I'll investigate
myself. Well, that's going to work, isn't it? And it doesn't look great. But I think, dare I say, there are worse elements to the Mandelson-Epstein relationship, and they go to the heart of Mandelson's role in Number 10, at Gordon Brown's side, when he was his business secretary and de facto deputy prime minister, trying to influence government policy to help billionaires in the US save money on tax. I can't get my head around that. I can't get my head around that. It's as if, Darren Jones now were trying to help parents get off paying VAT on private schools. And you'd be like, but this is your government's policy. What are you doing? Yeah. I understand if lobbying on behalf of the business community is something that you think the business secretary should do, but not in a covert way.
No, I was going to say, openness is everything, isn't it?
Everything. And there is a really interesting piece that is now in the Times, which is that it's suggested by Stephen Swinford that Mandelson leaked number 10 documents to Epstein talking about government assets that might be sold off. Why was he telling Epstein? This was confidential information. Yeah. Was it that he thought Epstein might buy the land? Was it that he thought it would help? Why was Mandelson seemingly on the side of the billionaire paedophile and not on the side of his own country when he was working in government?
You said to me in a previous conversation we had at the tail end of last year that just looking, not just about Mandelson, not just about Andrew, but just looking at all of this stuff, it's power, greed, influence, vanity. It's all there, isn't it? All the worst traits that we find in human beings.
Yeah, and it's, the worst thing is that none of it is really surprising. I mean, you're talking about a man who was at the heart of government twice before and both times got sacked for very similar, very adjacent...
Money and influence.
Money and influence, right? So why has it taken us so long to learn what this person is like? And, there's a lot of talk now, to be fair, about, who's going to lose their title and should Andrew still lose his title and should Peter Mandelson still be in the Lords? Well, I get that because, he still influences British government policy from the Lords if he chooses to. But I do think we are so way beyond titles now. We are looking at potential sentences. We're looking at potential criminality, aren't we?
This brings me on to questions about Andrew. And if you want to throw Mandelson into it as well, surely it's time for Parliament to start throwing its weight about in terms of committee hearings. You can summon people to parliamentary committee hearings, can't you?
You can summon people to Parliament, and you can suggest that Congress does the same. I mean, I think Congress has a very odd relationship, in America, has a very odd relationship with the royals because they sort of, they love our weddings and they love Downton Abbey and they love the aristocracy. And so it would take a big step for them to actually say, we want the former prince here. But I can't help feeling that was definitely what the king was doing last autumn. He was paving the way for that to happen. He was cutting... Oh, of course. I mean, I think by... frankly, shoving him out of Royal Lodge, taking the title away, he was saying, you are not treading on my toes if you want to come and get him. That is not my responsibility anymore. If you need to question him, be my guest. I mean, obviously, you never hear those words from the king himself. This is my interpretation.
That's your interpretation. And police, of course, could always ask him for a conversation.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is time now. We've got 3 million pieces of what floating around. This stuff is so exponentially big, it's quite hard to know where to start with it. But
to grab it,
but you do want it to end in something that looks like accountability, don't you, Sheila? You do want
victims.
Sort of,
there are victims.
There are victims, and there is criminality clearly, and we don't know who those criminals are, and we don't know, whether they deserve prison sentences. But I think we have to start asking the questions, right?
And in Parliament too, for sure. Thank you very much. Oh, Emily, before you go, I understand the newsagents get a mention.
We are in the Epstein files.
You're in the Epstein files.
What does that say?
What does it say, though?
It says, we must shut them down. We must redact.
Really?
No, I'm joking. We are in the Epstein files. I mean, funnily enough, I guess, there is a lot of stuff in there. That's my point. So every time you make a bid, I think it was our producer, Laura Fitzpatrick, had put in a bid a couple of years ago for a victim of Epstein who was sort of writing about this. And so that's in it. I think, the interview's in it. There is quite a lot of, go on there. You can Google and it throws up some extraordinary stuff. It also throws up a lot of stuff that is unverifiable and probably complete rubbish. So that's why it takes so long. Yeah, because you're reading sort of stuff that is potentially, explosive and stuff that is clearly fabricated side by side quite often.